I never thought I'd be starting over at 42. I'd built a life around stability, around helping others make sense of their emotions while quietly managing my own. Being a psychologist meant people looked to me for answers, for clarity, rarely realizing that I, too, stood in the ruins of things I once thought unshakable. The divorce was final a year ago. A year. And yet some days I still woke up expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway, or the soft jingle of his keys on the kitchen counter. Old habits died slow. But the bruises, emotional and physical, they had faded in their own ways. The last time he raised his hand to me, something inside snapped, not just from pain but realization. That my son, Noah, had been watching. I knew I could endure a lot. But seeing that flicker of fear in my boy's eyes, that was my breaking point. Since then, it's just been Noah and me. A house that once echoed with tension now felt eerily silent most days, as if it were learning to breathe again. I filled it with soft music, with morning light pouring through open curtains, with a scent of chamomile and sage. I was trying to create peace, even if it hadn't yet fully settled inside me. Noah, he was 17 now. Taller than me, with his father's angular jaw but my deep-set eyes. A boy caught between youth and manhood. His voice still catching at strange moments, like it hadn't quite decided where it wanted to land. He was quiet, reflective. He always had been. But lately, there was a new distance to him. Not cold, just unreadable. And that unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Maybe it was his age. Maybe it was the divorce. Maybe it was both. I still remember how we were before everything fell apart, before the shouting matches became routine, before the front door slammed more than it opened, before Noah stopped asking if we could all have dinner together. He used to run to me with questions, with wide-eyed wonder. Now he offered one-word answers, polite and measured, like he was afraid to burden me. This morning, I watched him from the kitchen as he sat at the dining table, hunched over his homework. The late March light spilled over his hair, catching flecks of gold in it. He didn't notice me. Or maybe he did and just didn't want to engage. "How's the essay going?" I asked, breaking the silence. He looked up, his expression unreadable. "Fine." He nodded. "Need any help?" "No, thanks." I tried to smile. "All right." We danced around each other like that most days. Careful, cautious. Two people stitched together by blood and love but tiptoeing through the quiet mess of our shared past. I often wondered if he blamed me for leaving his father. If he thought I'd destroyed the family he once knew. But then there were moments, small ones, that told me he didn't. Like when he'd make me tea without being asked, or when I'd find my favorite blanket neatly folded on the couch after a long day. Once, I caught him staring at a photo of us, me holding him on my hip, both of us laughing before life taught us to be guarded. There were questions in his eyes. Questions he wasn't ready to ask. Or maybe I wasn't ready to answer. That evening, we sat across from each other in the living room, the TV humming softly in the background. I had my laptop on my lap, reviewing notes from a patient session when he spoke. "Do you ever miss him?" he asked without looking up from his phone. I froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Your dad," said, buying time. He nodded. I set the laptop aside. "Sometimes. But not in the way you might think." He raised an eyebrow. "How then?" "I miss the version of him I married. The one who made me feel safe. Not the man we left behind." Noah looked away, jaw tight. "He was different with me." "I know." A beat of silence stretched between us, taut and full. "I never wanted to take him away from you," I added quietly. "But I couldn't let him take me away from myself." He nodded slowly. "I get it." And I think in that moment he truly did. Later that night, I found him asleep on the couch, curled up like he used to when he was little, the soft rise and fall of his chest soothing something in me I hadn't realized was tense. I draped a blanket over him and stood there for a while, watching. My boy. My reason. My anchor in the storm. Maybe we weren't healed yet. But we were surviving. Together. And sometimes that was enough. It happened gradually. At first, it was little things. Noah started joining me for coffee in the mornings. Not with words but presence. I'd find him already sitting at the counter when I came down, stirring sugar into his mug like it had always been his routine. He didn't say much, and neither did I. But the silence felt different. Less hollow, more comfortable. Like we were both learning to speak a new language we hadn't used in years. He laughed more too. A soft, guarded sound at first, like it had forgotten how to echo in the house. But I noticed every time. It would catch me off guard while I was unloading the dishwasher, or when we were flipping through old photo albums he once ignored. That laugh, his laugh, felt like light cracking through frost. The first time he made dinner, I nearly cried. I had come home late from a draining session with a couple on the brink of collapse. Emotional fatigue clung to me like a second skin, and I stepped into the house ready to collapse. But the scent of roasted garlic and herbs stopped me in the hallway. I blinked, confused, before stepping into the kitchen to find Noah, sleeves rolled up, gently stirring something on the stove. He looked up sheepish. "Thought you might be tired. You cooked." He shrugged. "It's just pasta." It wasn't just pasta. It was his way of saying I see you. I notice. I set my bag down, my voice caught in my throat. "Thank you." He smiled, and it was the first time in months it reached his eyes. That night we ate side by side, knees brushing beneath the table. He told me about a teacher who mispronounced his name all year. About a friend at school who'd just come out and how surprisingly well it had gone. About a classmate who had asked him if I was really a psychologist, because apparently, I looked too cool to be one. We laughed together. Really laughed. And something softened between us. After dinner, we ended up in the living room again, flipping through a box of old photographs. The one of him at 6, covered in chocolate icing at his birthday party. Another of us at the beach. His arms looped tightly around my neck, my hair a wild, wind-blown mess. "God," he said, holding it up to the light. "You look so young here." I was young. He turned the photo toward me, eyes flicking between it and my face. "You still look the same." I raised an eyebrow. "Nice try." "I'm serious," he said, his tone quieter. "You look happy." I leaned back, studying the image. I was. Before your dad changed. Before things got hard. He nodded slowly. "It's weird. I used to think you were unshakable. Like nothing ever got to you." I met his gaze, a little stunned. "Noah, it's not a bad thing," he added quickly. "Just seeing you now, I realize how much you must have held in." That moment caught me off guard. Not just his awareness but his willingness to share it. I'd always known my son was observant. But there was a maturity in his tone now, something that hadn't been there before. Or maybe I'd just missed it, buried under the weight of survival. "You've grown up so much," I said softly. He looked away, smiling shyly. "I've had to." I reached over, brushing a strand of hair away from his face, an instinct I hadn't indulged in years. He let me. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. His eyes flicked back to mine, and for a second, everything stilled. Then he leaned his head on my shoulder. Just like that. No hesitation. No explanation. Just warmth. I froze, not out of discomfort but surprise. It had been so long since I'd felt that kind of closeness with him. The kind that wasn't loaded with guilt or trauma or unspoken tension. Just a simple, quiet need to connect. I let my head rest against his. And we stayed like that, tangled in a quiet that didn't need decoding. Over the next few days, Noah's openness didn't fade. If anything, it grew. He started joining me for evening walks around the neighborhood, our steps falling into rhythm beneath the early spring stars. He told me things he'd never shared before, about the way he used to hide in his closet when his dad got loud, about how he'd once thought love meant silence, not safety. We didn't talk about his father much, but I could see the way Noah was slowly reclaiming himself, rebuilding his sense of what love looked like, what it should look like. And I, somewhere in all this, felt like I was being remade too. One night, after watching a movie together, I found him lingering in the kitchen, washing the bowls. I leaned against the doorway, watching him hum quietly to himself. He turned, drying his hands. "What?" "Nothing," I said, smiling. "Just, seeing you like this makes me realize how lucky I am." He blinked, surprised. "Lucky?" "Yes," I said, crossing the room and resting a hand on his shoulder. "I get to see who you're becoming. And it's beautiful, Noah." His throat worked silently, like he was trying to swallow emotion. "I'm lucky too," he murmured. "To have you." In that moment, I understood something essential. We weren't just mother and son healing from the fractures of the past. We were finding our way back to each other. Not through grand gestures, but through the quiet, patient work of being present, of showing up. And every small moment, every shared coffee, every soft laugh, was a stitch in the seam we were carefully sewing shut. Together. The change in Noah was undeniable. It wasn't just the laughter or the coffee in the mornings anymore. It was how he looked at me. As if he were seeing me for the first time, not just as his mother, but as someone real. Whole. Human. It was in the way his eyes lingered when I tied my hair up in the morning, or how his expression softened when I walked into the room. He started paying me compliments. Gentle, heartfelt, never forced. "You look really pretty today, Mom." At first, I brushed them off with an awkward smile. "You're sweet, Noah." But they kept coming. "That color looks amazing on you." "Your laugh is nice." "I don't hear it enough." "You're honestly kind of a genius." "I don't know how you do what you do every day." He'd say these things with a shy shrug, his gaze drifting somewhere between my eyes and the floor, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to admire me the way he did. He started helping out around the house more, unprompted, folding laundry, taking out the trash, setting the table before dinner. But it wasn't just that. It was how attentive he became. The way he listened when I talked about my work. How he'd ask questions, real ones, not the kind you ask just to be polite. "So, when someone comes to you with anxiety, how do you help them? Do you ever carry their pain home with you? Why did you become a psychologist?" I hadn't expected those questions to move me the way they did. But each time he asked, I found myself opening up more. I started sharing pieces of myself I hadn't even realized I'd locked away. My fears, my hopes, my regrets. I wanted to help people because I didn't have anyone to help me when I needed it, I told him one night, as we sipped tea under a wool blanket on the porch. The stars were faint, but the moon hung low and generous. Noah nodded, quiet, his hand resting close to mine on the armrest. "You help me. Every day." His words made something stir inside me. A warmth that wasn't just maternal pride. It was more complicated than that. Felt seen. Not as a mother, not as a woman recovering from heartbreak, but as me. It was 3 days before his birthday when I realized that Noah wasn't just reconnecting with me. He was falling in love with me. Not in any way he would say out loud. Not in anything overt. But it was there. In the way he moved around me, watched me. The way his fingertips sometimes brushed mine when we passed each other in the hallway. And he didn't pull away right away. The way he smiled when I laughed like it made him whole. It was something neither of us could name, but both of us could feel. His birthday was approaching, and I wanted to do something special. Something that reminded him how much he meant to me. Not just as my son, but as the heart of this home we'd rebuilt together. So that morning, I woke up early and slipped into a dress I hadn't worn in years. Soft navy blue, fitted at the waist. Delicate at the collarbone. Not flashy, but elegant. I curled my hair, dusted my cheeks with warmth, and wore the pendant he gave me last year. A small silver circle engraved with the word grace. I baked his favorite cake. Dark chocolate, raspberry filling with a hint of orange zest in the frosting, something we used to make together when he was little. I still remembered how he used to stick his finger into the bowl when he thought I wasn't looking. As the cake cooled, I stood by the kitchen window, the morning light wrapping around me like silk. My heart beat fast, not out of anxiety but something closer to anticipation. I heard his footsteps before I saw him. He walked in, still sleepy, hair tousled from the pillow, rubbing his eyes with the back of his hand. He stopped in the doorway the moment he saw me. And something shifted in his face. His breath caught, eyes tracing me slowly before he even said a word. "Mom." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Happy almost birthday." He took a step forward, then another, and then he wrapped his arms around me. Fierce. He buried his face in my shoulder, breathing me in. "God," he whispered. "You look amazing." I felt his arms around my waist. His chest pressed to mine like he didn't want to let go. My hands hovered for a moment before I gently placed them on his back. "Thank you," I said softly. We stood there for what felt like a full minute, no words, just quiet closeness. When he finally pulled back, he looked at me with something unreadable in his eyes. A deep affection, mixed with longing and a kind of reverence that left me breathless. "I made your favorite," I said, gesturing to the cake. He blinked, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Of course you did. You remember everything." I turned to slice it, hands slightly trembling. He stayed close behind me, reaching around to grab plates, his fingers brushing mine again, warm and steady. And all the while I could feel his gaze. Not like a boy looking at his mother, but like a man looking at the woman he cherished more than he could say. He looked at me for a beat too long. Then he said, "I want to repay you." I tilted my head. "Repay me?" He nodded, nervous but determined. "Dinner. To real place. My treat." "Noah. I know you always do everything for me," he interrupted gently. "Let me do this for you. Please." His tone left no room for protest. Agreed. That night I wore something simple but elegant, black with soft lace at the sleeves. I kept my makeup light, just enough to feel like I was stepping out of the mother role and into the version of myself I hadn't worn in years. The one who still knew how to be seen. The one who still believed in being cherished. He was already waiting for me outside the restaurant, leaning against the car in a dark navy shirt and clean-cut pants, the streetlight catching the outline of his jaw. When he saw me, he straightened and opened the door with a small smile. "Wow," he whispered. "You look." "Don't say it," I teased, but my cheeks warmed anyway. We walked inside, side by side, the quiet hum of clinking silverware and low conversations wrapping around us like a blanket. Our table was tucked into a corner by the window, where the night lights flickered softly against the glass. Felt private. Sacred. He pulled out my chair for me, waited until I was settled before sitting across. His manners had never been this deliberate before. He ordered for both of us, confident, calm, and I watched him with quiet wonder. He wasn't my little boy anymore. He was someone else now. Someone who still carried the boy within him, but who now chose to love outwardly, visibly. As we waited, he leaned forward on his elbows, eyes fixed on mine. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking about today. About this past year. Everything you've done for me." I shook my head gently. "That's what mothers do." "No," he said more firmly than I expected. "That's what you do. No one else could have loved me like this. Not like you do." The honesty in his voice hit me harder than I was ready for. And just as I was about to say something, anything, his foot brushed gently against mine under the table. First I thought it was an accident, but then it stayed. Just a soft pressure like a whisper through contact. My eyes flicked to his. He didn't look away. His gaze held me there, steady, warm, filled with something I didn't dare name. I reached into my bag, suddenly needing to change the current of the moment, and pulled out the small black box. He blinked. "What's that?" "Your last gift," I said. "Something to remember today." He took it with both hands, reverent. When he opened the lid, his breath caught. "What?" Sleek, silver-toned, understated but elegant, just like him. "It's beautiful," he said, awe in his voice. It looks like something from a movie." I reached over and adjusted the clasp on his wrist. "Fit perfectly." "It's yours," I said. "You're a man now. You should have something that reminds you of who you are. He looked at me like I'd just handed him the world. But before he could say anything more, the restaurant door swung open behind me. And then I heard her voice. Is that? I turned, my heart flipping mid-beat. My sister. She stood in the entryway, coat half open, eyes locked onto the two of us. Me in soft black, Noah leaning slightly toward me, both of us caught in a space too intimate to be explained away. She walked slowly toward us, confusion blooming in her eyes like a cloud. I stood too quickly, knocking my knee against the table. Hey, I said, trying to mask the tension that suddenly thickened around us. What are you doing here? I was meeting a friend, she said slowly, still looking between Noah and me. Didn't know you were out. Noah stood as well, one hand brushing his napkin from his lap, the other resting lightly on the back of my chair. Happy birthday, she added to him, her tone carefully neutral. Thanks, he said. The silence after that was full of things none of us were ready to say. She smiled tightly, nodded once, and walked away to the host's stand. Noah turned back to me, eyes questioning. She just doesn't understand, I said softly. He nodded. That's okay. She doesn't have to. We sat back down and he reached across the table again. This time, his fingers brushed mine deliberately. His thumb lingered on my skin. We didn't speak for a long moment. We didn't need to. The bond between us had already become something more than titles could contain. Something quiet, tender. A love born from shared struggle, deep respect, and the kind of closeness that time couldn't fracture. And whatever came next, we would face it. Together. The drive home was quiet but not awkward. The kind of silence that was full, not empty. Streetlights passed in a rhythm, their amber glow washing through the windows and over Noah's face, softening the sharp edges of his profile. He looked ahead most of the time, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the gearshift. Still, I felt his awareness on me, like gravity, gentle but constant. Neither of us spoke about the moment in the restaurant, or the way his foot had found mine beneath the table, or my sister's look. But it lingered between us. Warm, buzzing, irrevocable. He pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. The house loomed in the dark, quiet and waiting. Still, neither of us moved to get out. I turned to look at him. He was already watching me. There was something in his gaze that made my breath catch. It wasn't just affection, it was clarity. A kind of knowing that went deeper than words. He reached over, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered at my jawline. I meant it, he said softly. Everything I said tonight. You're everything to me. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He leaned in, slowly, carefully, as though giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't. Our lips met in a kiss that was gentle at first, more question than answer. Warm. His hand moved to my cheek, cradling me there like something fragile and precious. My fingers curled instinctively at his collar, pulling him slightly closer. It wasn't just a kiss. It was the release of everything unspoken. The weeks of closeness, the morning coffees, the shared grief, the laughter, the way he had begun to look at me, not as his mother, but as the woman who had held his world together. When we finally parted, his forehead rested against mine. I've wanted to do that for a long time, he whispered. My voice barely rose above a breath. I know. We didn't speak again that night. We just sat there, wrapped in the quiet of the car, of the dark, of the moment that had changed everything. Whatever the world outside might say, whatever rules, whatever judgments, we knew this. It wasn't just love. It was the deepest kind of recognition. Two people who had carried each other through the storm, and now, for the first time, allowed themselves to feel the light.